Hi, today we're going to take a look at the Steam reviews of Dragon Age the Veilguard. The game came out on October 31st, 2024 for $60 in the United States. It caused a lot of controversy online and got pretty good ratings from most gaming journals. We'll see how these Steam reviews differ from these gaming journal scores. As of September 11, 2025, the game has accumulated 42k reviews. To put it into perspective, Stalker 2 came out around the same time and has doubled the reviews. 69% of the reviews are positive. This is what the cumulative count of reviews look like. Currently, the game is getting 13 reviews per day on average. That means it's barely getting any new players. Very successful games from last year like Black Myth Wukong still get around 100 reviews per day. And Baldur's Gate 3 has been out for a couple years and it is still getting close to 200 daily reviews. Within 2 months of the release, the game got 80% of its annual reviews. It is not out of the ordinary for single-player games, but it is just that the numbers are just too low for AAA standards. The like ratio from week to week fluctuates between 50% and 80%. It is not very stable. It peaked at 78% and the lowest point was 54%. Since the first 2 months hold the most reviews, it didn't change at all after it settled around 70%. Let's compare it to the other Dragon Age games. Like we said, the Veilguard got 42k reviews with 69% positive rating. Compared to the rest of the franchise, it has the worst ratings on Steam. Actually, every new game the franchise released, the reviews became worse. As a result, with every new release on Steam, the overall positive rating of the franchise went down. The Veilguard made a very big impact on the franchise, as you can see here. If we look to a little earlier, we see a tiny dip in the franchise ratings. This is actually caused by the announcement of the Veilguard. When the Veilguard was announced, people went back and played the other Dragon Age games. This happens with all the franchises. This chart shows the average weekly reviews of each game before and after Veilguard's announcement. You can see how it doubled the attention these games were getting. That boost in the reviews pulled the franchise reviews a little lower because it turns out that these people dislike those games a very tiny bit more. I want to compare games one-on-one, starting with Dragon Age Origins and the Veilguard. They have around 1800 reviewers in common. Those reviewers rated the Dragon Age Origins very highly compared to the Veilguard with 91% against 66%. 32% of everyone who liked Dragon Age Origins disliked the Veilguard. Dragon Age 2 and Veilguard have around 900 common reviewers. Similarly to Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age 2 performs much better in this reviewer group. 23% of everyone who liked Dragon Age 2 disliked the Veilguard. Inquisition and the Veilguard have around 2000 common reviewers. Like the previous games, Inquisition performs much better in this reviewer group, and 29% of everyone who liked Dragon Age Inquisition disliked the Veilguard. Now I want to talk about language statistics of the reviews. The overwhelming majority of reviews are in English. I would expect Chinese to be higher up, but apparently the game wasn't released on Chinese Steam, which is probably a huge disadvantage for overall sales too. By the way, T Chinese is traditional and S Chinese is simplified Chinese in this graph. This is what the game's performance looks like in major languages. Because English is such a large portion of the reviews, it is right there around the average with 69% positive rating. This is how other Dragon Age games performed in those languages. I know this is hard to read, so go ahead and pause if you're interested in a specific language or game. The point of this is we see that Veilguard performs the worst at almost every language. Apparently, the French speakers didn't like Dragon Age Origins as much as the other languages, and the Japanese didn't like Inquisition. These are mostly issues related to language support. Let's look at countries. For us to see countries, Steam users must have their privacy settings set to public. And country is Steam store country, so it doesn't guarantee that that person actually lives there, as some people might find ways to change their country to find better prices. In our case, 20,000 out of our 40,000 reviewers have their country information public. Most of the reviews come from the United States. Here is how the game performs in different countries. If we put the game's performance onto a map, it looks like this. This map tells us that the game performs bad all over the globe. It performs so bad that it is hard to see contrast in this scale where the best score would be 100. If I change the scale to show the best score at 80, we start seeing some contrast. Keep in mind the greens here don't mean the game does well, it just means it does relatively well. We see kind of an east-west split here. Here is how it compares against other games. You can pause and take a look at a particular game or country if you like. I want to also look at US states since a lot of the reviews come from the United States. As you would expect, the ranking of the number of reviews is very similar to population ranking of the states. This is how the game performs in states with at least 30 reviews. I'm not super knowledgeable about US states, so American people can probably interpret this better than I do. This is what it would look like on a map. Again, the map hides contrast when we set the target as 100 points. So if we lower the bar to 80, we can see some contrast between states. Again, this doesn't mean the game performs well in the green states. It just means it performs relatively well. This is how each game performs in each state. Note that these numbers can jump around a lot because of small sample sizes for some game and state pairs. Let's look at what people are actually talking about in their reviews. This is the cloud map for the English reviews, which make up 70% of the reviews. Apparently, people talk more about the game's story elements like companions, characters, quests, and dialogue than combat and gameplay. This might be a gamer behavior for RPGs. Looking at likes and dislikes separately, there isn't much difference in topics. Again, they talk a lot about the game's story elements. Finally, I put the game's reviews through an AI sentiment analysis model to see how positive and negative the sentiments are. 61% of reviews fall into the positive category, with 31% falling into the negative. The rest 8% are in the neutral zone. So if we were to give the game a score out of 100, 60 would be a good place to start, but you would be disregarding a lot of the very high positive reviews. So my conclusions are: the gaming journalists failed to match customer sentiment. The purpose of the gaming journalist should be to give a potential customer a good idea whether they would like the game or not. Clearly, they failed this task. The game performs worse than similar games and isn't getting many new players either. So if the game hasn't made its money back yet, I don't think it's making it back in the near future. The game's reviews are significantly worse than previous Dragon Age games. You could say this game hurt the franchise very badly. Can the franchise rebound from this? Not in my opinion. It is still a good brand, so maybe they could explore going into the mobile games market to milk it or something. The game usually performs worse in more traditional cultures like Eastern Europe or Italy or most Asian cultures or Poland. The main topics of conversation are related to writing. So if the developers are looking for what went wrong or right, it is a good starting point to look at. And finally, the sentiment score from the AI model is mediocre at best with a 60% positive rating. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any games you want me to look at or any stats that you want to see, please leave a comment.